what does it mean for us as a bank? So yes, we operate in a number of different countries. We have staff who travel the world to service our customers. We have to keep them safe. So from a physical perspective and from a terrorist perspective, it's very important to be on point from an intelligence point of view and understand what is happening and where the areas of danger lie so that our staff can be best protected. But increasingly, and I would say over the last 3 to 4 years, and some of that has been with the work that we've done with Don and his team, some of that has been through a little bit of self-realization. We also see that these geopolitical factors are playing into what we see in the cyberspace and the cyber arena as well. So Don's talked around some of the practical examples of that and how it can manifest itself. My point is that cyber threat intelligence is no longer just about the ones and zeros. It's no longer just about the technical elements, important as though they are. The strategic strands and the week-to-week, month-to-month strands are actually increasingly coming from the geopolitical arena as much as they are coming from the cyber arena, the technical arena itself. So we're providing context. When something happens like the TalkTalk breach, well, that's an easy one to say there's a link into the bank because some of our customers were affected and financial data was at stake. When there's a DDoS attack on the BBC, which is essentially a public service paid for by the license payer, you might ask, well, why would we be interested in that from a bank perspective? Well, we're interested because, as Don says, threat is all about intent and capability. And we need to understand what the intent of the threat actors are against different organizations in different sectors, and also what their capability is. If they wanted to attack RBS or our customers, how successful would they be based on our control environment? And there's a couple of other important topics or categories, if you like, that we also look at as well. So from an intelligence perspective, we are absolutely concentrating on the external landscape. So we are absolutely concentrating on intent and capability. But the value in that is when you then add in exposure and vulnerability to that same threat. So each organization has a very different profile and different reasons, as Don's touched on, for being attacked or for being a target. And if you are exposed to that intent, then the threat is going to be larger for you. If you have the vulnerabilities which are being exploited by those with the capability, then the threat is far more relevant for you. So we have a team, we've separated out the intelligence and the threat management teams, and our threat management team concentrate on the exposure and vulnerability of the bank and our customers to the threats, while with intelligence we look at the intent and the capability. So we're identifying new and emerging threats and attack techniques, and then a big part of what we do is to funnel all of that information, and I'll touch on this in the next slide, and make that meaningful, make it contextual, make it relevant, and then deliver that in a timely manner. So there's no point in sitting on it and making it the prettiest, most in-depth report imaginable. Sometimes you just have to get it out the door and into the hands of those who can make decisions. So how do we do it? Well, there's a myriad of information out there. So the first step has to be planning. And any good intelligence provider will work with their customers to understand what their intelligence requirements are. So Don's team could provide you with intelligence on anything. I'd like to think our team could provide the bank with intelligence on anything. But we are a small resource when we compare ourselves to other teams within the bank. So we have to show value for money, and we have to be on point to deliver something relevant to the bank. And the way we do that is by capturing the bank's intelligence requirements. So this is all about understanding what the business strategy is, the products and services that we deliver, how we deliver those, and therefore then what types of threats could impact upon the delivery of that to our customers. And by doing that, we can then derive a set of intelligence requirements. So intelligence requirements are often about the who, the what, the why, the how. And by capturing those, we can make sure that we're not doing something for the sake of doing something because it's interesting or because it's cool. We're doing it because it's meaningful for the bank. Then we set out to collect the information. We monitor for certain triggers and events which might change our response, might change the frequency by which we report. And the sources of information are in the middle there. So I was talking about the funnel. So we use a number of different sources. We've got quite a rich variety of sources. A lot of my job is in talking to other people, shooting the breeze, as it were, but always on point in terms of discussing what's current, what are they seeing, what are we seeing, and doing that in an appropriate manner. So we use closed sources, and those closed sources could be other banks. We have a number in the financial sector. We've got a number of forums which are formalized. They have charters, they have terms of reference, but it allows us to speak freely. We don't talk about personally identifiable information, but we do talk about quite detailed attack information, and we'll share that with each other, because sharing is the only way in which you can gain an understanding of everything that's going on out there. We talk to the government. We talk to not just the UK government, but we talk to the US government. We talk to French, Finnish, Luxembourg, Switzerland, lots of different government agencies who've got skin in the game as far as protecting ourselves against cyber attacks is concerned. We would consider Dell SecureWorks as a closed source because we contract to them for them to provide us with some of their proprietary intelligence information. We talk to Police Scotland as well. So that's a two-way thing. We tell them what we see, and they tell us how we can help ourselves as well. And we try and contribute to some of the takedown activities which you read about in the press. We look at open sources. So there is a huge amount of information out there. Sometimes you just need to know where to look. It's incredible, and actually, the amount of research and the amount of information which is available, but also the amount of free information, so it's a threat, but it's also an opportunity. So in an intelligence team, the amount of information that's posted on social media, for example, is a great information source for us. It's also a nightmare in terms of our customers giving away a lot of information about themselves, which can then be used for attacks. So it's a two-sided coin. Get my analogies mixed up. And then we also use internal data. So what are we seeing? What is within our sensor network that I mentioned? What are we actually seeing on the ground? What are our customers experiencing? What are we seeing in our logs, which is indicative of trends? When we see a new Drydex spam run, we'll typically see that coming into our staff email boxes just as much as we'll see that going into our customer email boxes. Our customers might take some time to report that into our phishing box if they report it at all, whereas we will see that coming into our staff. So we're pretty on point, and we're pretty quick to recognize when these campaigns are happening. And then I've mentioned information and sources of information. We need to turn that into intelligence. So how do you validate the source? How do you understand that what you're reading is true? Everybody, I'm sure, knows that if you read something on Wikipedia, it doesn't necessarily mean to say that it's a fact, because anybody can edit Wikipedia. So we look to corroborate sources. We look to fuse sources together to come up with an accurate depiction of what is happening at the time. And then we look at delivering that to the right people. So we've got a range of stakeholders within the bank, and increasingly we've got a range of stakeholders external to the bank as well. So those information sharing communities do not work in isolation. You have to be contributing to those to be able to consume them from them as well. So we do share intelligence. We do share our conclusions with the National Crime Agency, with Police Scotland, with other banks, with government agencies, and with our partners as well. And then a really important part to close the loop is re-evaluating the requirements. So when you provide that intelligence, actually does that close off that loop, or is this something which you need to continually monitor? What action did it drive? Is there anything residual off the back of that which you need to do again? And that feeds back again into your intelligence requirements. So this is a continuous cycle which operates and never really has an ending. But it does have a number of products which come out of that cycle. So I want to talk briefly about the 3 layers of intelligence, and then I'll talk through some of the main threat categories and how intelligence can help you to prevent those from having an impact at your organization. So within our intelligence team, we deal with a number of different threat thematics. It's not just about cyber, and increasingly, as I said, we see cross-pollination between a lot of these different thematics. Geopolitical factors influencing cyber as well as terrorism. Physical crime being driven in conjunction with fraud. Fraud being driven by cyber activity and sometimes even by geopolitical activity as well. Don talked about the effects of inflation, the effects of global commodity prices. There are certain governments out there who need sources of money, and not all of those sources of money are going to be legitimate. So we have a three-layered approach to disseminating intelligence. I mentioned our strategic threat assessment, so we're looking at the big ticket items which are going to affect how the bank does business over the next 12 months. Typically quite a high level document. There's not huge amounts of detail in there, but the detail comes from our operational and our tactical work. So from an operational perspective, we're talking about profiling the threat actors who might seek to do us harm. We're talking about understanding the threat environment in different companies in which we operate. We're talking about influencing the different products and services that we provide and influencing those on a sort of week-to-week, month-to-month basis. And then at the tactical level, the sharp end, if you like, that's your real-time stuff. That's what's happening today, that's what's happening tomorrow. That's, we've got an attack happening this week, how are we responding to that? How is intelligence supporting the recovery from that incident taking place? And it's important actually to get the distribution of your resources right across the three layers. I know a lot of organizations just focus on the tactical stuff. And that's fine because that will get you to a certain point. But there comes a point if you want to develop and you want to use intelligence as an enabler where you have to start influencing how you do business based on what you're seeing from a threat perspective. And that's where the operational side comes in. And then there comes a point where you actually don't want to spend money on security controls, which are a waste of time. So you need to understand how the threat landscape is moving so that you can spend your money wisely and you can stop those attacks before they start to become a bugbear for you and prevent you from being able to do business. And that's where the strategic layer comes in. So I'll try and make that a little bit more real for you. Almost every threat has in common, Lockheed Martin call it the kill chain in a cyber context. Some of you might be familiar with that. If you're not, it's worth having a look and a read around that because it sets out in quite easy to follow steps how an attacker puts together a cyber attack. This is a very simplified look at it, and it's really taken into context the attacker's mindset. So for almost every threat that we deal with, the attacker will have taken some time to construct that threat. They might do some reconnaissance. They might be out there looking at the information which is available to them on the internet the same way as we do from an intelligence perspective. They'll gather information on the organization they wish to attack, on the individuals who work there, on the structure, and then they'll decide which attack is going to get them to where they want to be. They'll then focus on how they're going to deliver that attack. So is it by spam emails with a malicious code attachment embedded in a Word document, for example? Is it a drive-by download by compromising a website? They'll look at how they infect different machines. They'll look at how they then manipulate those machines or the people who are using those machines. So social engineering I'll touch on as well. And then they have a planned impact. So Don talked about the intent. That's really, what are they trying to get out of it? What are their objectives for each attack? So that's the attacker mindset. Let's look at that in a malware context. So when they're constructing the threat, they're looking at what types of malware they're going to use. There are different malware variants out there. Some they can get off the shelf, some they can get in the underground economy. Some of the most sophisticated groups will actually construct the malware themselves. It's very rare, but it does happen. They'll look at how are they going to get the malware onto the victim's machines. As I say, are they going to send it out by email? All of these services are available, by the way, in the underground economy. I'm sure most of you know that. So you don't have to be proficient in every single element of putting the attack together. You can just go and hire the service from someone else. So you might want to employ somebody to send out millions of emails with these attachments on them. You might want to compromise some sites where your victims are likely to visit and therefore be able to deliver malware to them that way without their knowledge. Then you have to pick the vulnerabilities that you're going to exploit. So the vast majority of vulnerabilities that we see are ones which have already been discovered, they've already been declared, and there are already patches available for them. But something like 98% of all cyber attacks could be prevented if people just patched their boxes, kept on top of operating system updates, kept on top of security patches as they become available. That's really easy to say. It's not easy to do, particularly in a large organization like the one I work for. When you have a number of different applications, a number of different sets of infrastructure, of different server types, all meshed together in a way where nothing can fall down, sometimes deploying a patch without testing that appropriately means that something in that chain is going to fall over or break. So you have to do it on a risk and threat-based basis. And again, that's where intelligence comes in. Understanding which vulnerabilities are easily exploited by an attacker with the intent and the capability to go after your organization. Those are the ones that you need to patch first, not just because your vendor says that this is critical. You have to look at what is the context behind that. Social engineering. So the malware itself will typically get the attacker to a certain place, but there has to be a manipulation of the end user to get them to do something they wouldn't otherwise do in order for it to be effective. Financial malware wouldn't work unless the customer was logging onto online banking and giving away or taking steps that they wouldn't normally otherwise take so that the malware can circumvent the payments, for example. And then the objectives, the impact, the theft of money or data in this sense. So intelligence can provide early warning of these malware families. It can provide indicators of compromise, so the technical data that you can use. We're not just talking about antivirus signatures. There's a layer of technical controls that can be used to fight malware. And understanding what that malware looks like and how it operates is how you can break it down and how you can stop it from achieving its objectives. I talked about patching. It's very important. It needs to be done, and it needs to be done on a threat and risk-based approach. You can understand the MOs, so you can educate your users, you can educate your staff and your customers into what they shouldn't do to stop the malware from having an effect. And you can learn about the mitigants that are available out there to stop it from taking place. Over the last few years, we've seen a resurgence in DDoS attacks, and I think the last, when Don was speaking, one of the questions was around, the barriers to entry for cyber weapons have been massively reduced. There are hundreds of DDoS attack tools available to anybody who wants to use them on the internet. They're not hard to find, they're not expensive to procure and use. So we've seen a huge rise in DDoS attacks in the last couple of years. And we've had to invest in DDoS mitigation services to stop that having an impact on our customers, stop our customers, or to enable our customers to continue to do business with us in a seamless manner. So from a DDoS perspective, the attacker is constructing the botnet, they're deciding who their target is, they are again looking for vulnerabilities, particularly if it's an application layer DDoS attack. They're looking at the bandwidth that they can generate, the power that they can generate, the packet rate that they can generate, and the impact is the loss of service. So again, intelligence can provide early warning of those DDoS attacks. When Operation Ababil was in full flow, I was actually genuinely delighted at the level of intelligence sharing that went on within the financial sector in the US at the time. So banks were getting hit, and within 5 minutes were sharing the technical characteristics of those attacks with other banks who were on the target list. It was absolutely incredible. People were sharing scripts that they were using to deflect these attacks, sharing techniques. There were regular calls, there were face-to-face meetings. It was a real team effort to negate the power of this never seen before botnet, which literally threw everything but the kitchen sink, or probably including the kitchen sink as it was in terms of DDoS attacks at the financial sector. And there was a huge collaborative effort to nip that and to stop it from being so effective, which was partially successful. So intelligence sharing around the attack scripts, the rule sets, the techniques used, whether it be null routing traffic, filtering certain types of traffic, getting large PDFs off your web server, and then recovery advice as well. And then social engineering. So this is pretty endemic in terms of cyber attacks and cybercrime out there. The bad guys are constantly engaging in con artistry. They are circumventing your usual patterns of behavior or taking advantage of your usual patterns of behavior in order to get you to do something which you wouldn't willingly or wittingly do. They're creating really convincing templates and scripts to get you to download malware, to get you to give away credentials. They're emailing you, but they're also texting you, they're also phoning you. And they're phoning you and they're giving you some of the information that they've already gathered. So it's very convincing when they do phone you. There are groups out there phoning our customers, pretending to be our bank and asking them to move money into accounts that they have control over, which the customer has no idea around. And they are so convincing because they have the customer's information already. And where are they getting that? They're getting it from social media. They're getting it from data breaches. The value of data in the underground economy has gone up immensely in the last few years. They're constructing their lure. You know, it needs to be something that they can get the victim to respond to. Very common one this time last year was getting an unexpected telecoms bill in your email queue from your mobile phone provider. You know, you're due £120. That's enough to get most people to open up that invoice to see what the hell is going on, because they don't normally spend £120 a month on mobile phones. It's all about social engineering. It's all about the loss of credentials. And intelligence can give you, again, that early warning. It can let you know how they're doing the social engineering. It can give you that knowledge so that you can give your customers, your staff, your third-party suppliers that awareness to help protect themselves. And it can also help in terms of credential recovery. I wanted to just lastly touch on the Cyber Information Sharing Partnership that we have here in the UK. So this is a government-provided platform. It's absolutely free of charge. If you are an organization, you should be a member of it, because it's a great resource for you to be able to consume and also to contribute to cybersecurity intelligence sharing. And CISP will give you a lot of what I've just been talking about. It will give you that early warning. It will give you threat indicators. It will give you technical mitigants and advice. It'll give you situational awareness so you understand the threat landscape and the environment in which you're operating in, and it will give you lots of shared experience. CISP is relatively immature at the moment. It's been running for a couple of years. It will get better the more is contributed to it. So it will become a body of consumable, shareable, rich information around the threat landscape in which we all operate. RBS is the Scottish Business Champion for the Scottish section of CISP. It's called a node, which is called Skynet. If any of you in an organization haven't joined CISP yet, I would urge you to do so. It's pretty simple to sign up. Once you do, if you're based in Scotland, please join Skynet. I'm one of the admins on there, and I will make sure that you're involved in that. At the moment, there's not enough sharing going on in CISP. So it's very easy for, it's a bit like, I'm sure not that many of you use it for anything other than academic purposes, but it's a bit like BitTorrent. So there are plenty of consumers or leeches out there. There are not enough seeders out there at the moment, and we need to change that. So the more people who are on CISP, the more people who are sharing as well as consuming on CISP, the better that will be. But it's a wonderful opportunity for the UK, it's a wonderful opportunity for Scotland. So please do have a look at CISP if you have the wherewithal and you work in an organisation that has the wherewithal to do so. And that's me. I hope you found it interesting. Happy to take a couple of questions.
For organisations which aren't as big as the RBS, like lots of the small businesses in Scotland,
Yep.
what would be your suggestion for them to get some sort of threat intel, or how they use it?
So there's a lot of good sources out there, some of which are free and open source. You know, if you're interested in how cybercrime works, there are journalists like Brian Krebs, who runs his own website, who for one man I think does a fantastic job in terms of decoding the myths behind some of how the miscreants do their business. But there's also some of the big companies, so Dell SecureWorks, Kaspersky, Symantec, you know, a lot of these big companies will publish quite a lot of their research online in their blogs, so you don't need to be a customer to get a lot of that stuff. That said, that's time consuming. Sometimes it's very technical. You might not necessarily have the wherewithal to consume that in a meaningful way. In which case, CISP is actually quite a good place to go and consume information and ask questions. You know, there's no such thing as a daft question in this world. So I would definitely recommend CISP. You know, it's not a sales pitch; it's free. So I think. Yeah, definitely. As I say, we've got the luxury of having an intelligence team. I appreciate that is not the norm. So looking at the good sources of information, Scottish Business Resilience Centre is another. You know, you get so much for your membership fee. In that, I would definitely encourage small businesses to sign up to that, because you're getting the delivery from the government and from law enforcement, as well as some of the bigger companies who are giving away their knowledge to help the environment.
I'm from the same financial services background as yourself, and I'm curious to get your experience on how you can turn forward advice to a business owner into action in an environment that so often really responds to evidence, and in most cases evidence of something that's happened already.
Yep. It's a really good question, Gordon. Thankfully, with less difficulty than maybe before. So when I first started, I joined RBS in 2008. RBS was very much a risk management focused organization. And they probably didn't take too kindly to somebody coming in from outside the organization telling them what they should be aware of from a threat perspective. And the concept of threat being folded into risk management wasn't something that was widespread really at the time. We then run into some issues around incident response, which, as you quite rightly say, is twofold. One, how do you react to something you can't see or hasn't happened yet? And in the more strategic layer, actually, how do you spend money on security controls if you can't see the threat, or if the threat has never happened to you? So my answer to that is, and I think what we've done in RBS, is we've established credibility. So by being accurate in terms of our predictions, by providing timely, relevant, actionable threat intelligence, it's a slow process, but over time, the more credibility you get, the more people actually proactively come to you seeking for advice and information before they're deploying a control, or before they're preparing a business case, or before they're designing a product or service.
Can I extend my question a little bit? Do you see is that a direction of travel that seems to be persistent in your organisation, or is it born of a few moments in time where perhaps your intelligence has proven to be correct, and God forbid, disasters that haven't hit your organisation too badly have been dealt with? I would like personally to think that what we're seeing now is a bit of a change in the orthodoxy in organisations like ours, where an understanding of the value of that kind of service is getting a bit more ingrained. But I have a fear in the back of my head that, you know, one disaster after another may raise the temperature a bit.
And I think that's fair. So I can only talk from our perspective. And as I said at the start of the presentation, cyber threat intelligence has become very much a buzzword. You know, there's a lot of vendors using it to sell products. There's a lot of people putting operating models and processes in place and built around it, putting intelligence at the forefront of the organization. I think in RBS, the good thing that we managed to do was we got cyber on the agenda 4 or 5 years ago, right up to board level. We've worked very hard to follow the government advice on that, the 10 steps to cybersecurity. And I think by doing that, that always calls for that intelligence-led approach. So I think it is now, there is a bit of momentum. I think it's still got some way to go before it's ubiquitous across the organization, for sure. But then we're a large organization. So, but yeah, I can only go by demand, and we're more and more getting asked for our products and services compared to where we were a year or 2 years ago.
Okay. One last question.
What sort of metrics do you present, let's say, at board level to convince them that this is worth putting money in?
So the question was, what sort of metrics do we present at different levels around threat, around the threat landscape?
Whatever you're doing, because with other businesses, they can quantify their risk
Yep.
using some known metrics.
Yeah.
The problems in this area, you don't have
So-
like standardized metrics.
So some of those are, so actually MI and metrics is an ongoing conversation in our organization. I'm not sure we've ever quite nailed down the right set. And each area of the bank will have different needs and different ways of doing things. So they might want to know certain information rather than others. Comes back to that intelligence requirements that I was talking about. Some are no-brainers. So amount of phishing attacks that we have, that attack our brand versus the amount of attacks which are out there, the amount of malware infections that we have, either within our own infrastructure or at our customers that we see interacting with us, the different types of malware that those are. You want to measure things like if you're doing phishing awareness training, how many people click on a phishing email versus how many people do after you've delivered that training. There's a whole myriad, really. It'd be difficult to cover them all in today, but you know, and it depends who your audience is. So if you're talking to the board, it needs to be relatively high level, it needs to be powerful metrics. At a strategic context, I spoke about those 3 layers. If you're talking to a business owner, you're probably more into the operational context. And if you're talking to network defenders, that absolutely has to be tactical, day-to-day metrics that you're using then.
Okay, thank you. Oh, one more.
Are you able to comment on how obvious, or how far out the policy chain you've got insider threat mitigation?
So I always find it, I won't comment on specifics, no, obviously, not in this forum. But you know, the insider threat I always find amazing when people commoditize that as a threat category or as a word, because as soon as you look into insider threat in any way, shape or form, you realize that it can be applicable almost in any threat category. So you're really talking about somebody having the wherewithal to do something within your organization that is against the grain. It's a very, very difficult topic because of that to categorize. It's difficult to break it down and to chew it down and then to say, okay, we have a set process to deal with that, or we have a set, you know, one department, for example, that's going to deal with that. So I would say it filters through into every single threat category that we look at. It's absolutely something we take seriously. There are a range of different pitfalls when you start looking at insider threat, particularly if you're looking at monitoring behaviors of staff. But it's something that you have to take seriously. There's some really good advice actually from Police Scotland around insider threats. And again, through the likes of Scottish Business Resilience Centre, small businesses can take advantage of some of that advice. But I think it's too big a category or a threat type, if you like, to have its own little spotlight. For me, it's endemic across all the other different categories. Sorry, I know that wasn't really a direct answer to the question. But.
Okay, thank you. We need to catch some coffee because I think it's nearly time for it to go away, so we better get it before it goes away. So
Thanks, folks.
Thanks very much. We'll try and catch up with the time in the next few while. So if you could just grab coffee now, and we'll call you back. That was.
Oh, that's mine. I need to give you this. Thank you. No worries.
That was really good. I think we could have stayed for questions for half an hour. There's a lot of interest.
It's a hard one, is it?
Well, you're the end point. You could say it's
Thanks.
and you get the middle.
Don't know, this is not from suspect it's because he upside down. Like a screen.
Just click on your belt. Happy New Year.
What do you want me to use? Who's in there? Test, test. It's a bit better. How many people are there? Like 3, no? No, there's like 3, I think. Refresh that. Actually, I think this bugs.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because on my phone it was written like 2 or 3. If you look there. And there is, it says 3. To be Peter, student.
They can all hear you as well.
Yep.
I'm around this week and next week. Thank you.
Thank you for watching us fooling around with the stream. Okay. Do you want to cut this and put something like will be good?
Dropbox. On Dropbox. Do you know where it is? Is it in the Cyber Academy?
Cyber Academy, the events, but it was, I don't know if you have a new one because it was the only one.
Yeah. Dropbox. And then how did that go? Was that did that work?
Yeah, the sound was a bit quiet
Yeah.
because we're just getting used to it. But I've
Events.
cranked up the sound now, so it should be
Defensive training.
should be a lot better.
2016.
Don't do anything personal, it's still streaming.
No. It's still streaming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we can stop the stream.
That's alright. And here. Oh.
Was it rename or anything? Yeah? Events and training?
Events and training 2016.
Yeah? No.
I'll take a look.
I've got on a USB if you, just in case. Yeah. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, good. You?
Not about yourself?
Happy New Year and all
Happy New Year indeed.
Happy Hogmanay. Sorry, I keep forgetting.
Presentation.
I can just bring. So
USB stick is
I've got a USB stick, or I can just plug my device in, whichever is easier.
Up to you,
Yeah.
I'll do the
HDMI
device. It's probably easier.
Device.
It's what's this? HDMI. Yeah.
Oh, did I see your name there?
A little bit, no. Yeah.
Oh, maybe, did I bring a folder over? Is that what it is? Folder here.
Ah, that's mine, yeah.
Which one?
The first two ones. Yeah, that's the one, yeah.
Alright,
Yeah.
so I think I've
It's okay. Yeah, I put it as a PDF as well, just in case. Old bad experience, with things not working. So I always keep a PDF version of a presentation just in case.
I mean, it actually comes out. It comes out actually probably best in PDF now.
Yeah.
It's low risk. But but that's
Yeah,
fine.
that-
So we got that one. So
I had
that's
it-
that show one there.
yeah.
And then who's up next? Is it? Who's up next?
Just a little bit sunny.
Do that.
Want some more coffee?
Yeah, you can get that coffee. White, no sugar.
It's a good device, good gadget.
If it works.
If it works.
Hey, it works. There you go.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, love it actually. Love it. Yeah, it's a 3 Pro, not a 4, but it is fantastic.
So you want to attach that?
You okay with us broadcasting it live?
Yes, nothing's already in the public domain. The only trouble I'll get in is we've rebranded, and this is the old branding. So I'll probably get told off for that.
Brandon, not for the logo.
Yeah, no, it's fine, but leave it there. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not in presentation mode there anyway. Oh, radio mic as well.
Yeah, yeah. So click that on. This is for the YouTube fans. It just clips to your pocket or wherever you want it to clip to. There you go.
There we go.
Drop that on your. There you go.
And please don't turn me on until I'm speaking, because anything could come out of my mouth.
You're actually streaming live now, so.
Expansion all the time. I always sort of perceive you in the stratosphere. But I think that's. I don't know who this gent is. Do you know him? Chuckling while you say that.
It's all right, everyone will know me. I'm speaking next.
Oh, right, okay.
I'm Scott. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, we've probably met before, and I know some of your colleagues. Jim Slaughter's the name that springs to mind.
I brought Jim into our
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's a hero. And who's the young lady that came across from S&R?
Sarah Holmes.
Sarah Holmes. Yeah. Yeah. So we knew Sarah quite well under Jim. So I'm an N-Case guy. So under Jim Hardy's.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm still in touch with Jim.
Yeah, no, me too. Me too. In fact, I could have killed him last week. Although on the upside, he did say to me, I said, "Oh, I'm up in your manor on Sunday night, Monday." He said, "Oh, where are you staying?" I said, "Oh, the Novotel, Edinburgh Park." He said, "Oh, make sure you bring your swimmers." Yeah, make sure you bring your swimmers, and that was good advice. So I did actually do some exercise. Yeah, okay. Not just you. I stopped last year till June. Back on it. New boss. Everything changed.
I'm always
You're still mic'd up. Can I have the mic? Are you up next?
I thought I was up next.
Oh, the guy from NCC Group's up next.
Oh, he is, yeah. That's good. That gives me a few more minutes. I can't see that.
Fantastic. Okay. Oh, there we go.
Why didn't we
Stick that in your belt.
I don't want to tell you. And she was getting told by people around there. Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, your son's
Sorry, Tim.
on
Trying to jump through.
So, that's all right.
Excellent. Stick that on there. There you go.
Thank you.
Feeling like you're in CNN or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Live right now, so.
This is live right now, is it?
several hundred is over a landscape. So they zoomed all the way in.
So they want to show them training about SQL map. It's great to see that they're watching the TV and say, we should be training our staff on that type of environment.
And just because the subject matter was of interest, I was really learning this program. And then you come on.
But you should see the video.
It's like those, like you imagine all those crazy scientists, you know, that they're so excited, you know, that he'll be 80 years old, you know, he'll be like 14, you know, he'll be always excited with everything. He does like that, he's always excited the things he does. Otherwise he would do it. It was really lively, you know, the things that he did, you know, the kids just loved it. And you know what? There were 14, 15-year-olds that they were answering questions about SQL injections and stuff like that, and DNS. The guy looks like 14, you know.
It's really good, because actually that, I wish, you know, given what we do, I've chastised my daughters for how much they give away. I discourage my wife from eating like a birthday. You know, in our line of work, we can't get used to it.
Well, you see on my presentation, I try to approach the whole thing less technical. You know, I did focused on social engineering, and one of the things that I started looking for email addresses from businesses, and I just checked bank email addresses. I found more than 1,000.
Yeah.
Just in Google, nothing, no OSINT software.
You go into details of that, of some of the recent sort of hacks, BBC.
No, not really.
generally,
It's more general. I touch later on looking at what I tend to look at later on is look at the share price between the example company.
Oh, that's really
So look at the share price of TalkTalk, look at the share price of Wetherspoons in comparison to each other, and also look at the Buzz Index and some of the market research as well, which is.
We do that too, and it'd be interesting for us to kind of cross correlate. What we do is we look at the 7 days before. For Heartbleed, Google and Yahoo lost 15%. So the buzz in Seattle was that something big was going to happen and Yahoo was going to be the one that was pinpointed. So we actually tracked the share price back and noticed that 15%, and then it went back up, and then it hit worldwide, and then it went back down again.
Yeah, most share prices recover, but the TalkTalks is still floating around at 750 million still lost.
But the government needs to step in and actually put some regulation around it. So insiders shouldn't be telling the people on the stock exchange that something is kicking off. I think in most areas you would say if you're publishing your accounts and you've had a bad year, if you go and tell the stock market before it's released, then the massive penalties, and I think security breaches, it goes the other way. I think with NCC Group, your share price went up when you found one recently.
Yeah, whenever there's a high profile breach, our share price goes up. Because, you know, and the same will happen with other security specialist organisations. Share price goes up because we're investigating it.
So you ready to go on that?
Yeah.
You know, I realized is they don't. I went.
It's just off at the moment.
Deposit the check from a customer.
Yep.
Right. Okay. Can we have you back, please? Okay. Can you grab your coffee and have you back to your seats, please? Great. Okay. Well, the next session has got three presenters. We have some from guidance software. We have 7 elements coming up. But our first presenter is from the NCC group. Thank you. You want that?
Thanks very much. I think I'll probably be safe to say that I can turn this microphone off. Can everybody hear me at the back? Yep. Can I hand? There we go. Okay, welcome. Hi, I'm Tim Anderson. I'm one of the Associate Directors in NCC Group, and I'm responsible for the commercial aspect of cyber defence operations. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. I'll run through a little bit about who I am, who NCC are. We'll look at some of the current threat actors. We'll look at the risks. And then we'll start to look at the press, and we'll start to dive into really what the press's motivations are, and how some of the pitfalls and what you should do as an organisation to prevent falling into some of these pitfalls. And then we'll, towards the end of the presentation, I'll look at some of the results of getting it right and some of the results of getting it wrong. I'm not going to concentrate too much on Dido Harding's. Some of the elements of my talk will feature in Talk, but as you can, I think she's had pretty much of a good beating and a good basting over the past sort of few months. So a little bit about NCC. We're an information assurance company. We do things like website testing, performance testing, and there's probably about 50% of the arm is dedicated to security and security assurance. We've just been elevated to FTSE 250. We're a UK-based company. We have over, that figure, 1,400. That's actually gone up to 1,800 now, so we're quite large globally, and we've got about 500 security consultants around the globe. Cyber defence operations isn't as large as that, shamefully, but with our recent acquisition of Fox IT, I think we're probably well over sort of 150 consultants in the cyber defence incident response area. What we believe in really is cyber, to offer to our customers is cyber resilience, and this is what the types of services that we offer in that space. This is the route really to cyber resilience, strategic and tactical. Preparation, assess, maintain, respond and review, and I'm going to concentrate very heavily here on the prepare side of that cyber resilience. So what have we learned in 2015? The BIS report told us that security breaches have increased, and now we're up to about 90% of large organisations have had an incident at one scale or the other, which has increased from 80% in 2014. We've also seen that the average increase of a breach has gone from £99 per record to, sorry, not per record, per breach, to £102 in 2015, and that varies dependent on what sector you're in. The health sector, it's about £214 per record that is stolen. That's the cost to the organisation, so it does vary depending on what sector that we're in. And if you add up all the breaches that we've seen in 2015, it comes to over 1 billion personal records were illegally obtained in 2015. That's quite a large number, especially if you multiply that by £102. That's quite a lot of money. So I'm just going to run through the threat actors. I think we've seen some fantastic slides this morning around some of the threat actors, but I'll just remind everybody in case we don't really know. It's the criminal gangs, cyber terrorism, political hacktivists, disgruntled employees, our dear friend Edward Snowden, commercial espionage, Somali pirates. This is a new one. We did a piece recently and we found a rat on their net that was beaconing out to Somalia. So we're now, they're obviously getting themselves in deployment of rats in companies. And the good political nation states that we've concentrated on. Or what are we trying to protect? Are aware it's personal intellectual property, business information and intelligence, financial loss, regulation breaches, criminal reputational damage, which is what I'm going to be focusing on. Viable. Many people in security say, well, how can you quantify your reputational damage? And I'll give you some clues into how you do that. So the media are hungry for attack stories, breach stories, because the public are interested. You know, a few years ago, public wouldn't necessarily be interested because they didn't understand, but now they're starting to. Email address ending up in the hands of a criminal act, that they're going to be susceptible to phishing, be potentially susceptible to phishing attacks. So the media are hungry for, and the public are interested. The media are hungry for stories. Let's just have a quick look at some of the headlines that I managed to grab off Google. This is Beatrice, but it's the broad streets as well. So these are the headlines of some of the stories that we saw last year. So cybersecurity breaches are news, and it's news because the public are now becoming more and more interested. Newspapers, social transactions, we did this and we saw that last year 74,000 over the word hacks. Data conversations, cyber attacks, nearly 9 on social media. It's quite a large number if you think how detailed those conversations might. Just to give you an example of some of the people who fell foul of the media or had to respond to in one shape or form last year. You'll also notice on there that there are some organisations, Marks and Spencers and British Gas, data, but it didn't stop them becoming a story. They were still picked up in the media. This is a really unfair one with M&S. The actual breach on an M&S was a typical application security flaw where a user could see somebody else's details. We've seen that, I've seen that time and time again, and it's reported, but it's not picked up in the press. I knew stuck it on their website and they gave a whole 60,000 UK customer data stolen in 2015. And then they had a paragraph about that big talking about M&S's breach, or M&S's M&S's logo right at the top, which is the Just Eat one, which I followed on Twitter. I'll refer to that in a bit. Obviously their data was obtained somehow, but they suffered the consequence to respond on Twitter to say, no, we haven't been. Their email addresses of their customers might be obtained, shall we say, but they reported, they'll say to this day, that they were not compromised, were not hacked. But it didn't stop them coming, didn't stop them appearing in the news. On BBC News, that was a headache. Some people suggest, I haven't, but some people, suggest, can I just keep quiet about these breaches? Yes, you can. Requirement to disclose. Believes that serious breaches should be reported to his office. Now, I think if you report them, then the media will pick it up a few months later when it could be potential side. But obviously, this is going to change. The new EU legislation comes in force. The GDPR does deal with breach disclosure into play in the spring 2016, where in law that we need to disclose. So it's even more important to make sure that you don't fall foul of media's attention. Also, people ask, how likely is it that I'm really going to be attacked? We've stopped saying that, looking at it as an insurance. We suggest to organisations that prepare for the will. Prepare that you will nowadays. Crux of all of this this comes from. In that, the preparation for an incident response strategy is so important, part of your incident response strategy to respond to the media. So let's look, I'm going to touch very briefly on what an incident response might look like. This is a presentation itself, so I'm not the highlights really. You're not going to panic, and that's the first, don't panic. It increases, putting a plan together increases the chance of a favourable outcome. And attacks do happen all the time. Everybody says that, so prepare accordingly. Make you look at the whole of the security life cycles that you are doing. You have penetration testing. You're looking at threats on your network, so you're in. Don't forget all of that fall foul, because you will increase your chance. You don't prepare accordingly. Empower your staff. Your staff can be one of the best, because if you educate and empower your students, then they can prevent some attacks. NCC Group, where we became a target of a spear phishing campaign about 2 months ago. In the morning, NCC Group, spelled group with 2 R's. Because we're a organisation, obviously we educate our staff with regards to phishing and the type of things to look for. That was picked up straight away, and our CDO team were alerted. That person who worked in finance was a device for NCC Group. Also identify the key individuals responsible for incident response. Saying, okay, who do we need to talk to in the organisation? Who do we in PR? Who's awake from HR? Should we wait? Make sure that you've got somebody who is skilled in incident response and is also skilled at pulling various departments together who aren't going to have store relevant. A number of times we turn up on an incident response, the data isn't backed up. Forget about whether or not we've got any data to start investigating, but some data isn't even backed. A lot with ransomware at the moment. You ask them, how long, when did you last back up? Because that's the way of retrieving the data, and they go, ooh, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, some of them. So store relevant data so that incident response or your analyst can investigate going backwards. Think about the supply chain as well. Think about how your supply chain storing data. Are they logging? Through the whole supply chain. We've had instances where an organisation didn't know who they hadn't asked about them. Effectively, it was 2 people in an organisation. But when an incident happened at the weekend, husband and wife were on holiday that weekend. So, they didn't restore anything. So do these investigations. And finally, retain special ER in communications, which I'll come into. If you don't have the skills in-house to do incident response and forensics investigations, don't wait for the event. Start looking for one. Look now. Any good incident response organisation, what your policies and procedures are, they'll want to look at your incident diagrams, they'll want to build a call tree with you so that if something happens, they can respond in line with your incident response plan very, very quickly. So don't wait to the event, because so much time can be wasted. So your incident response plan needs a communication plan, right? It's so important. For this is that if you can possible, you are going to stop communication, and in the event, ultimately to do that, to kill a story in the media, is make it not interesting. Right? No pathos, no excitement, not very exciting, is to tell the truth, to be transparent with people, exactly what happened. Because if you say that as much as you know on day one, the following day, there's nothing really more important to add to the story, because it was the same as what it was. So that's the crux really, is and to take out the sort of surprise from many of the stories. So, first things, be considered. Hence the reason why there's bees all over this presentation. It's full of bees. State the facts only, even if it feels comfort to your customers, and you believe that certain amounts of data haven't been compromised. Don't speculate until you know everything. If your incident, don't state something in the public domain that damage that case when it goes to court. Engage with your outsourced legal provider. You're going to make is checked. And basis that an incident is going to go to court. You know, incident response and forensics investigators always and they always retain a chain of evidence in the media as well. You should be working on the basis that something might, will end up in court. Always the best way to treat an incident. Address as early and as timely as possible with a holding statement on your words would be useful. That's what you are looking to implement for breach notification within 24 hours of use. On that statement, you will offer updates as your investigation with your incident response plan. So that you're not blagging it, that you've got a process. Yeah, you're not panicking and be engaging. Don't customers get, me as a customer, I get so when you don't get any information, when no one's talking to you. So don't stay silent. Don't ignore the customers. The customers are your business. We hear that all said, what's more important, city price or customers? And he said, your customers are customers. Anyone's customers are the city. That's what influences the city price. So engage with them via social media, press, telephone, email. Reach out to them. And I'll show some examples, some good examples of how that can be. Whether or not you think you're at fault or not, take responsibility and issue an apology. That's what customers want to hear, that you are responsible. You're a supplier. You as an organisation in that supplier, you are responsible, you're the data owner, you apologise. Seek PR advice. Engage with a specialist. I wasn't aware until recently that there's not many, but there are specialist crisis PR companies. And when I spoke to one of these people, I said, why do you only specialise in crisis management? And she said, well, I come from the background of PR, mainstream PR, and we'll hear from the press. We smooth the press, butter them up, and we're really nice to them because we want the story. If they get something wrong, press, you've then got you've got a decision to make. What do you do with the editor of such and such a rag? Do you phone him up and takes the story down? If the next day you've got to smooth him again on a story on one of your other clients. So it is a useful PR company that doesn't work for your regular militant when they need to. With specialist PR companies, they'll know exactly what the right thing to announce is. And incident response companies and legal companies who can work, don't understand the way that PR companies work. Companies don't necessarily know the way legal companies work. I'll be surprised. But pick your suppliers who have got evidence in working together as but focus on your customer in an incident, in any event really. Dedicated customer communication set up, create a landing page, an FAQ published on the website that is updated. Think about whether or not a dedicated customer service team is needed, and use social media appropriately. Cancel all tweets that were scheduled on Hootsuite. You really don't want to be in a situation where you're dealing with suddenly tweet about your next big, greatest product come. That would be quite embarrassing. Here are some examples. This is Mumsnet, who produced when they had a compromise and attack, and it was quite at gunpoint and all this sort of stuff. So it was a really ugly one. But I don't think people know about it really, and it didn't hit that much press because it was boring because they did everything right. There was nothing exciting the following day on it because it didn't run and run and run. Yeah, he didn't tell you sitting there going, oh yeah, well, this happened as well. I'll tell you that yesterday. But they put together a frequently asked an FAQ up with live updates on their website. Incidentally, if you try and Google search for organisations who have got correct, you can't find it. You can't find bad stuff about companies in breaches. You can never find good stuff. Apart from Mumsnet, a journalist who it's another example. Wetherspoons. Wetherspoons handled this breach as far as I was concerned. They ticked a lot of the boxes in with to coordinating information with the press. wasn't really a compelling story. Some of the analysis came out of that. Social media, consider social media. This is Just Eat. This is we're tweeting. We definitely haven't had a breach. If you have any questions, etc., etc. We definitely haven't. If you received a message, so they brief their social media teams, their marketing team, on ways to respond. JD Wetherspoons again. They put a link to their FAQ on their website. So the media itself, suitable statement needs to be drafted, not a press release, but a statement giving as much information as you can. So it should be short, but it should cover things had been breached, whether there was any financial information in there, and when it happened, and what the company are currently doing. That could be as simple as. Also draft a similar email to staff, leaked, so that's why you want to keep it as similar as possible, that you wouldn't want to give away to the media. Fully brief the CEO or the spokesperson. Make sure that fully brief them of exactly what happened, etc., etc. Journalists, the journalist breaking the story, somebody who phones up in the PR department, the help desk, or whatever it is. Remember that person and be courteous. Allow them to break. Really hungry for now, because they don't get many of them with social media. So that's one way. If you are courteous to them, you've got a friend. And if they get something wrong, go back to them. They're professionals, journalists are professionals, and journalists want to get their stories correct. So if they make a mistake, if they get terminology wrong, if they don't necessarily understand what, go back to them, talk to them, and try and offer them a simple explanation that they can publish. I've done this before. I was misquoted because I had a mouthful of, and he changed it. So just things massively important, that 24-hour window, golden 24 hours, and prepare a holding statement in advance. If you've already accepted that it's a holding statement together so you can release it early, it slightly. Engage with specialists now to minimize disruption when you have an attack. So, there we go. But unfortunately, results aren't guaranteed. Consultant. My background's in commercial side of it. So yeah, there are no guarantees. So let's have a look at some of the people who did get it right. This is the Buzz score. I don't know whether anyone's familiar with the Buzz score. This is something that YouGov do, and lots of other market researchers. They compare the things that were said positive about an organisation and things that were said negatively about an organisation. And 5 negative, your Buzz score's plus 5. Sorry. And this was the Wetherspoons Buzz score following the attack. That's all respondents. Interestingly, if you look at their typically buy and use their product, which they hear, it did take a dip. So certain parts of the buying community were listening, and it did impact on the Buzz score. The Buzz, we've also got reputation. Likely would be to recommend. It drops off a cliff on the of October, as you would expect. This is the breach notification. This is the consideration. So this is where market research you to buy, in this case, a pint from Wetherspoons. Breach notification, 4th December. It was largely unaffected. Biased because 4th December, everybody's got beer and drinks on their mind because Christmas is coming. So a little bit biased, but it's very hard to find this sort of information. TalkTalk consideration, how likely are you to buy from TalkTalk? Massive decline over that time. Share price. Share price is another good indicator. This is Wetherspoon's share price. That was the breach on the... So it clearly handled that breach. Clearly did their reputation and their share price. Okay, it was on the same scale. But interestingly, it didn't stay in the news. They handled it, the public and the media well, and it did. If Mumsnet were tracked by YouGov PLC, we'd see a similar thing for Mumsnet. Talk. First day, 420 million lost off their share price. That's quite a lot. And then people say, neat trick that cyber criminals are doing at the moment is hacking organisations, watching the share buy a load of shares because it's going to recover and then they cash in later. It's quite a neat little trick, but TalkTalk hasn't. 750 million wiped off their share price when I looked at it the other day. You can't say that that's all attributed to the breach, you know, sorry, all attributed, stand here and make that claim, but I think a lot has to do with it. And also the media do, so just to conclude, it's not a matter, so prepare accordingly, have a response plan that you regularly test. A lot of people put a plan together and they leave it on the shelf, test it. You know, come up with some incidents and run people through what they would do. Especially the board. You know, role play with the board. This is something we go into an organisation, sit down with the board, and we say, right, contacted you because of X, Y, and Z. What do you do? How do you respond? And they go, call someone from marketing or PR. So include a crisis comms element and seek professional expertise. Find that the media do get it wrong from time to time. And I'll finish there. Any questions? Everyone too scared? Yep.
Weatherstone's most common sold by colour.
Right, okay, thank you.
It's just a different client base than is anticipated, expected by maybe 35
yeah.
demographic.
But it's an interesting point to raise that is, you know, it doesn't affect bottom line. Incident data breach companies always recover and they always hit their targets. They hit their targets because of the efforts that PR, marketing and sales have gone to following a breach. So what tends to happen is marketing sit around and go, okay, right, we've looked at the buzz score from us, we've asked the question about a pint, we've asked the question about Coke, so they come up with innovative ideas. So one who I won't mention worked out, they had a significant breach, they worked out that knew that most of their buyers spent $60 with them every time, on average, every time they went into their shop. So as an apology for their breach, they issued a gift voucher $50, and everybody went in and spent on top of the $30 another $30, and they ended up finishing ahead of where they expected to be. You know, those tricks, you know, like Diet Coke over beer, important. Thank you for that.
I think the UK government defines the term communication providers, which are typically our ISPs. Do you think they're set up now that the bill is going to log everyone's details? Do you think they have the support? Because that could create one of the most massive data breaches ever. All our internet history was actually revealed to the world.
I think that's a massive concern. I think that's probably something that is the if that sort of information got out over for certain countries, working certain organisations and individuals in working with certain ISPs. I think at the moment we benefit from the separation of our data. So, if we bank with a certain bank and we use social media with a certain, so we're relation with different people. So, okay, someone might have our financial information, but they might not know who our families are. But so we do segregate it. And we all talk about the best way to prevent your top secret information to segregate your data. So, I think there's that's something quite important, I think. Thank you, Bill.
Well, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker is from Guidance, who are a market leader, obviously, in
Thank you. It hopefully will when I turn. I'll plug that quickly. It's all right, I deliberately did that. I see people seeing me type my password.
I must say I was in the House of Commons a couple of weeks ago.
There we go. Good now.
And people tweeted online that they can see my iPad password. There's a camera behind me. I don't know if you've been in the House of Commons. It's a horrible place. Laptop, actually. I just realised I had to open up my iPad and saw my PIN number. So if you want to know what the number is for my iPad.
Yeah, changed it yet, Bill?
Yeah, it's my new book. Go on.
I always seem to be either just before or just after lunch. And I think that's because I tend to shorten stuff and catch stuff up a bit. Hopefully, as I'm preaching to a room full of security professionals, today will be no different. Before I get onto the agenda, I just want to call out I want to kind of call out a little bit of text underneath here, which is operating under the assumption of compromise, for those of you that can't see it. And the reason I want to call that out, as at least one or two people in the room know, I used to be a firewall guy. I built my whole career, I've had a whole family kind of grow up through firewall companies. So actually, for me to stand here and make that actually kind of hurts a little bit. It says that 10, 15 years of building, chuck it out the window. So essentially this is a presentation of two halves. The first, introduction and cyber challenges, I'm going to drive home a couple of points that I think have already been touched upon today. And then really the second part of these three last bullets, this is an education piece, talks about some new terminology that addressed what had frankly become a little bit of a bridge or a gap between traditional forensics and quick hands. How many people in this room know or have used NCASE? Oh, marvellous. So our traditional forensic world, the likes of Stuart RBS's kind of, I've heard the term mentioned here, CDO, cyber defence operations. There's been a little bit of a gulf, and I think Gartner have kind of recognised that this sector, endpoint detection and response, kind of addresses some of that. So we'll kind of go into a little bit of that. So first and foremost, I made that bold statement, and in fact, Tim just said work on the assumption that you're compromised. Kind of whole presentation about it. Frankly, we've been doing all this stuff. So, our filters, web scrubbers, you name it, we've been chucking Teta at the network, for years and years now, and we've been millions on it. There's nobody in from JP Morgan, is there? JP Morgan, annual IT security budget, over $100,000, and they still get breached. And years, as somebody wisely pointed out earlier, we've got to get all of this stuff right. These only have to find one little thing. They can just be right once. We have this difficult. So that's kind of first part on that point. We'll look at this in the context of time. Initial tactical, I don't think this has been covered yet today, but if you listen to SANS or else that kind of gives us stats about what's going on in the market. All of it, this Verizon we're quoting here, 90% of those breaches, those initial attacks, happen in a day or less. Just stretching it out a bit. Our experience, and if you're NCASE people here, you'll know that we're often last in. We're the ones cleaning up the residue. With our tools, would have been the people, and I will mention her a couple of times. She has had a battering. I still think she deserves it. The mess. If somebody like Dido Harding had waited, heed his advice till she actually understood the scope and then spoken, very, very different. So time-wise, attacks are happening to us very quickly. How quick? Please build. So for us to do in a day or less, only happens a quarter of the time, which is kind of quite scary. And even scarier, just so I don't have to be the one to mention it, Ponemon report last year. And I'm not a huge fan of reading off slides, but this is pretty damning on all of us, me included. Smacks us with the fact that the bad guys seldom need days to get their job done, while we, the good guys, rarely get it done in a month for Sundays. Yeah, it's the world we live in. It's shocking. So, last time I did this, it was on a PDF and it didn't build. It just kind of showed everything all up front. Couldn't talk around the process of how a breach happens. So we'll touch upon a couple of points on this. I don't think our attackers, first thing they're going to do, there's been a lot of stuff about phishing. I would ask everyone to go back and have a quick look for people from your own organisations. Specifically, look for technical managers. See if in their LinkedIn profiles they talk about all the projects that they, such as worked with XYZ client in firewalls, worked with XYZ company put in firewalls. Because actually these things tell our attackers quite a lot about what our infrastructure looks like. Bear that with the reverse of vulnerability intelligence. And actually we're in quite a kind of scary place. I think the right bit on the slide would help. They infiltrate patient zero, subject of this conversation, so they find that initial person. If they're lucky, they've targeted somebody that has the right credentials to actually give them what they need. If they haven't, what will typically happen is they'll go and do a bit of lateral movement, find the person or people whose credentials they're after. And moving on from there, they're going to start capturing that data. The real point about this slide is that actually prior to the event, rather than post-event, as we keep ourselves out of the news, is our time, this is the window of opportunity, this area here. So actually, given that our attackers are working in days, it really doesn't give us very long. Kind of back to that, these walls around our organisations, but we left a big gate in the middle, being the endpoint. So, moving on. So SANS, I'm not going to read these guys, read everyone off. Kind of big pullouts. Proactive hunting, really important. Bears in mind with warning in terms of threat intelligence and how important that is. Another critical point, particularly, and I come to Edinburgh a lot, as many of you in the room know, and part of the reason that happens is within guidance, the writers of NCASE, I'm responsible for UK banking. And most of the SOCs are up here for most of them. Make that to Bill, frankly, in terms of churning out people from this facility who know what they're doing. But point relevant for banking, there are can't be taken down, end off. Yeah, so you need to have of protecting these systems. So hopefully, at this point, you would all agree that the likelihood is that you probably are breached, that there is something nasty on the network. Transitioned off the network and onto the endpoint. If I would set that in a room of IT security professionals, we speak at ISC squared, which is for the CISPs, for anyone who's an accredited CISP in the room. Again, same thing applies. Typically now we get a nodding head. And I've invited us to, there was a guy who spoke after me from the FBI, and the first thing he basically said, Ian's right. You're either breached or you don't know. So, what can we do about it? So I talked about this earlier. EDR, Gartner have called it, endpoint detection and response. The reason it's important to kind of people in this room, regardless of where we are in our respective hierarchies within the organisation, CISOs, our CEOs, our CFOs, listen to Gartner. Whether or not, whether we think that all the stuff that they come out with is a load of rubbish is kind of moot. As soon as Gartner start talking, it's an opportunity to capitalise on it. So I see some laughter down there. You're not from Gartner. Thank you. This couple of kind of call outs here though. Deep detection and analysis. Sounds like forensic stuff to me, which is great. Early identification of ongoing attacks. That's kind of more kind of threat intelligence type stuff. Enriched threat data. So I'm trying to kind of help you associate that EnCase isn't out kind of post-breach. We've got some stuff in our kit bag that can equally be in your kit bags, allow you to do some of the proactive as well as the reactive stuff. So, and kind of thinking back to that kind of perimeter issue, reason that endpoints have historically kind of been ignored. Yes, of course there was all this about the amount of protection that we could provide from the network. That's absolutely so arguably I didn't waste half my life kind of selling firewalls. But I think one of the challenges as to why endpoints have been ignored is just the sheer proliferation of data, you know, and these are just a few, you know, and there's huge subsets of this. And we would contest that actually, if you can capture what those, and you know, if you know, regardless of whether it's EnCase or a competing products, but something that helps you capture this and use that for actionable threat intelligence. Sensors, which I thought was a really nice term. He thought about inside users, those 100-odd thousand nodes of RBS employees and the customers. And that's because actually they can begin to start making actionable intelligence out of it. Specifically, things that we tend to focus on, anyone in the room who's been involved in an incident will kind of know these. I've pulled out 4 here. Process hashes, real big one. You know, and this isn't always easy to get from kind of standard operating system stuff. Of who's logged in, on what machine, what processes and what files they're accessing. Actually, the combination of all of those things is a massive IOC that perhaps even the network didn't see. Then, you know, it gives us an opportunity. Again, you know, it's all about defence in depth, this. We're not saying get rid of your firewalls, get rid of your AV. You need all of that stuff like you've never needed it before. So, quick kind of talk through of EDR. Really 2 elements to it. So there's the analysis piece, so data enrichment piece, I'll kind of explain a bit. And secondly, kind of my, you know, in the last 3 or 4 years at least, you know, my more traditional, you know, actual incident response. You know, how do we help talk, understand what's happened to them before they go and talk to the press or anybody else for that matter. To kind of highlight my point from earlier when I did lay into Baroness Harding, you know, please don't go and talk to the press until you understand what you're dealing with. You know, to me that seems obvious. Anyway, enough of that. So visibility, and these are call outs from Gartner, and again I won't, really 2 that I think are particularly important on here. One is the non-realism. So the reason our, you know, EnCase is still such a trusted is we can look at pretty much everything from volatile memory all the way down to the master boot record and everything in between. If we could only rely on Windows, then, you know, the portion of that information that's really useful to us is minimal. The second one down here, and file support, I think is also critical. If we look at any one of our larger customers, you know, our larger customers, infrastructures, yeah, there's a load of Windows out there than there ever was. Some people don't have the ability to look into those different operating systems. Real big one, Linux. Again, surprisingly amount of kind of non-EnCase tools that aren't able to look inside your Linux servers. And the other issue, and it's kind of put wiping there, but actually I think that's a bit of a misnomer. of dealing with a malware infected machine that you couldn't clean up with AV, re-image it. If that's my laptop, yes, it's an inconvenience. It's not going to impact guidance software's revenues in any meaningful way. If it's my CEO's laptop, probably the same, maybe a little bit more impact to it. If it services in a financial institution that isn't allowed to have any downtime, that's a whole ball game. You can't just wipe and re-image one of those. And I know of actual instances where a system like that has been infected and it's had to go to the risk register in a bank in this case, and actually the decision's been made to keep the box up because actually there's low, if they turn the box off they're going to lose £10 million. If they keep the box up, okay, there's a risk there, but actually it's unquantifiable. And we know there's something wrong with it, but we can't turn it off. Yeah, I'll take the risk on that. It's on the register. Us, true remediation means being able to look at a live system, different processes right up there in memory. Who was our first speaker up this morning? The guy from Dell. And he was talking about memory-only malware this morning, which when you turn your system you can't turn off. That's still there. So the ability just to go and remove relevant DLLs and registry changes that particular processor's made with those, and securely, i.e. forensically, remove that file from disk, with a proper overwrite, means it's not going to recur. So those are just kind of a couple of my favourites out of that visible. Don't even ask me about the Star Wars thing. Or do, but offline. I'm not. Again, deep visibility. This is just some of the stuff that we kind of need to know going on. For those of us in the room from banking, logged in users, real critical one. When did I say that? Logged in users, real critical one. If I'm trying to tie a particular individual in, with my old style encase kind of hat on, then actually I need to physically tie them to the machine access, when they were logged on, CCTV in the office, so on and so forth. But the whole thing about this slide is that you need deep, deep visibility to actually be able to turn stuff on if it's relevant. So flying through, because I promised I would. Analytic approach. Again, but it's like misnomer. About this as a visual approach. And a data breach that we don't talk about anymore is the Target one, just because everyone's done it to death, and it's kind of lots more interesting ones have come along in the meantime to talk about and to analyse, because there are some really interesting components in it. Structure actually was damn good, really good. So much so that be attacked directly, it had to come in through their supply chain, a heating and ventilation company, as I recall. But their infrastructure was good. They were logging all this stuff that happened on the network. But that SIM went to two guys, two SOC analysts, and they didn't get it as like a spreadsheet. So I used to get a report, and every day on that report, no less than 60,000 lines of instance. And they had just no way of looking for the obvious within that. And so consequently, the stuff that they should have been looking for got missed, made its way through that supply chain, sat on their network. If they could have looked at that visually, instead of 60, can you imagine 60,000 lines? Instead of looking at that, if they're looking at, for example, a heat map of their estate, RBS's numbers, they've got 100,000 dots, or rather, they've got 99,000 little blue dots. Okay, I'm good with that. But in the middle of those is big. It's 4 times the size of everything else, and it's bright red. Chances are even the dumbest of us, I'm pointing at myself here, is going to look at that one, look at that report and think, something a bit funny. Being able to actually look at stuff visually rather than just on lines of code is... bird's eye view, we kind of touched upon this. When we say bird's eye view, importance is that you're actually able to look at your whole estate. So that point I made earlier about how important the multiple is, It's no good just being able to look at your Windows machines, because actually you've got parts of your estate then that you're missing. And if you're missing them, somebody else will be looking at them. So actually the ability to go across everything, servers equally so, really, really important. So these kind of key takeaways from the ED, well, I guess for the whole deck. So firstly, you know, yes, okay, the malware might not be catastrophic for you, but I can pretty guarantee you that there will be some stuff on your network you don't know about it. To fix that, I'm sure people will go back to it. I think we published the slides as well, did we? Analysis, so being able to act quickly, and also understand where your data is. This is cyber workshops. We had a sudden surge of them after the TalkTalk stuff. It's absolutely amazing the amount of organisations that we would go and see, and we'd say, okay, so you've called us in, Taylor or the email or whatever, and they'll sit down and we'll have the right people in the room. Normally there'll be somebody from fraud, you know, all these different kind of stakeholders. Often, interestingly, the first time they've all together, which scares me somewhat. And I've forgotten where I was going with this. Data. We would say to them, where's your data? And they'll be obvious, oh, okay, our structured stuff's in Oracle or it's in SAP. Is that? Don't know. And that's typically the response. People simply, if you work that process back, most of us don't know what our endpoint estate looks like completely. You know, back to that hole that I mentioned in the middle of our citadel. So if we don't know what's inside there properly, how can we understand where the data resides on what endpoints within that hole? We simply can't. So what happens then is, if a breach happens, as Tim said, you know, there'll be a bunch of people, crisis team have to get to, where'd it go from? Don't know. Yeah, it's just not acceptable. Anyway, takeaways. I think we're wrapping up now. 2 case studies. Just point about this one is that the ingress of malware was done from vector, and that was I was going to call it a Kindle. They weren't Kindles, incidentally. They were Eastern versions of. They were used, identified through social media that this particular target organisation used a lot of these particular readers. From malware was engineered onto these to be ingressed into the network, being safe. So that's one, and the other one, we're wrapping up now. Actually quite a well-known story, this one. So, but what I think is interesting about this one is this talks about trend, even though this is an old one, that from all the kind of blogs and stuff that I'm reading, that people are kind of talking of attacks. Up until now, for, you know, as we've seen in great detail this morning, stealing data, particularly for those of us that are involved in private enterprise rather than military or law enforcement. What was interesting about this, and it's a Saudi oil firm to help a few people in the room put the dots together, was this was all about taking these guys down. Incredibly, they didn't. 30,000 endpoints, which was rebuilt in a weekend. 30,000 endpoints. So some IT supplier got a really nice. But this was all about being taken out of business. So malware put onto every single one of their endpoints, and it wasn't used to reconnoiter or invoice records. They got to a certain point in time and somebody somewhere went, detonate. Machine was trashed. Every machine. Now if you think that, and it did, and they did a sterling job of getting themselves in business again, but if that happens to our big banks or our power supply networks, it's quite a scary thought. So I think we're just... Mr. Kelty.
There's a challenge there from the ARC, from the EDR, in as much as point something of a foreign country to most traditional SOCs. As you say, most people have spent a long time concentrating on data transit through a printer.
Yep.
Processes and an understanding of what that means in the response book is quite mature. But the fact of the matter is really only 2 responses. Forget it because AV is going to contain what happens there, or flatten and forget and move on. Actually, it confuses you when you get to the R part. they offer you a response that most traditional SOCs don't really deal with. And I think that poses quite a challenge to
I agree.
the SOC function. I think it needs to mature into the space beyond the technology, because we're looking down the barrel of not actually knowing how to execute the function that we have. Detection of endpoint threats is one thing, but what do you do if you've got something that's a bit more advanced than something you can squash it for there and rebuild and move on from? You end up with an endless game of whack-a-mole and larger organisation in your tail.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything you said. You and I share a history. Yeah, but that to me kind of just highlights the importance of that was the endpoint, and not just filling it, you know, going back to, you know, sticking with me now, you know, consider your endpoints to be sensors. And actually, yeah, and then we quite often do another one of these kind of public talk things, which is, I can't remember the slide title, but it's essentially exactly along those lines, and it says, well, as a bit of a misnomer that not enough of us know enough about, and you're quite right, you pull people from our kind of shared history on the network, they will also pull people from forensics who have often been the poor sod, you know, and I say this as an end case man, you know, if we joke about this actually, we say and I hope I'm either going to really offend everyone or really make everyone smile. If we look at our average bank, you know, there will be, you know, their massive glass headquarters here, right? It doesn't kind of matter. At level -1 is IT. At level -3, as we go further underground, might be IT-Sec. Smaller group of people. Yeah, the forensic guy traditionally is kind of in a broom cupboard on -8. And actually that's a problem, because the SOC teams need to have people with desktop skills, you need forensic skills, you need network skills, you need web application, bunch of stuff that you need. And I think until that cultural gap within organisations is closed, then this will continue to be a problem. But yeah, good point.
Thank you. I think what we'll do is we'll break after the break. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bill.
To get there. Thank you.
Enjoyed that. Can't wait this afternoon, but I really wanted to see what a fantastic opportunity it was coming along to this. I work out with here, but I was at university here 20 years ago, so...
Fantastic, yeah, well, moved on a lot.
Oh,
yeah, it's good to see you.
Very pleased to meet you, thanks very much for that. I'm coming back after lunch, but you didn't
call everyone back.
Approximately, I'm going to go make some calls.
Probably say something and
I'll be here at 4.
Okay, very much.
Thank you.
Good, yeah.
Very interesting.
Do you want to see
there, isn't it? No, we're physically connected into the actual switch. So we have the guys from across.
And
yeah, downstairs.
No, from this floor.
This floor. Yeah. I'll find our staff switch. Because I knew.
Maybe
B32 is
go up there and just before the doors you go down to the right and right at the very end there.
Oh yeah, of course. It's a lot. Yeah, 152. Yeah. So ZZ 1. Yeah. No, but I'm thinking it kind of fluctuates with kind of network traffic generally, so it's maybe a bit.
All right, yeah. Do you know what it is? Do you know what
I
B32 is?
It's actually, I've been there. It's a big lecture.
It's along the corridor.
And then
you
straight on. Actually, I've been into that room.
Just before you get to the doors, you go right.
The reason I thought it's the
just let me check.
Kind of lecture room by the entrance to the library, but I think you're right.
Yeah.
The end of that corridor.
Yeah. Merchiston, Napier. I need to send you the details of the meeting on Thursday. Yeah. Oh, I'm meeting with Hutchinson definitely. Yeah. We're looking at the funding for that.
I'm working on you
Yeah.
for your to have a look at.
If you could, yeah.
It's not full body version of it because I'm still working on it.
Yeah.
There's so much to incorporate.
Just an outline.
Just
if you
outline,
take it to at least version 3 of SDN, which is the latest.
Yeah, with Scott Schenker in an email. I don't know if he replies. Seems to because. But to my knowledge, he's not written anything because you asked for actual papers to be cited. He is, as far as I know, has not written anything, but he's given 1 or 2 lectures. I've listened to those lectures, and what he basically is saying that they made a miscalculation on the middle boxes, and with middle boxes being so, as switching and routing devices, they now have to take them into consideration and kind of move them into the edge. He's talking about the edge. So he's talking about version 2.2 of SDN.
Yeah. It's what's happened with the room. Oh, it says we've been. It says that it's been booked.
B52, sorry, B52.
Oh, 52.
B52.
It's been booked for something else, for a
No,
lecture.
it's all right. Yes, at 3.
At
so
3?
we'll have to be at 3.
Okay.
We have to be out here at 3?
No, not here. This is all by
right,
B52.
B52.
Was only free from 1 until. It's along at the end of the. 32 it is. Sorry, I'm getting confused, but it's the one at the very, very end. No, it's all. So who's that message from?
There appears to be a problem with the unbooking for the lunch. Tom has booked to teach it.
Oh, it's all right. I talked to Mike about that, and we'll have to be out by 3, which we will be.
3 p.m. It says there.
Oh.
For why not?
Oh. Said that we had the room from 1 till 3 earlier, and people have just gone in for their lunch. They're there at the moment, so. Well, I don't know because I came back to check that there were no stragglers, and you knew about David Stubbs and about Azim. He's not able to make it. No, he said he's not able to make it, and neither is Azim. Right, okay, that's fine. Well, I better just go and check what's going on.
Yeah, if you just go to the
I'll go.
You're not having any lunch? I'll come along in a minute.
Okay then, alright then. Hi there.
Hey.
Sorry, I've seen you so many. I'm Bennett. I was.
Oh, pleased to meet you.
Pleased to meet you. I've seen you in many of these occasions, marker on my project.
Oh, right, okay.
But then that changed, so I've seen you here, but didn't know who you were, and then I.
Yeah, no worries at all. Yeah, absolutely.